Something is moving in Santa Clara, and it feels like one of those off-seasons that can reshape a season before the season even gets here. There's movement on the coaching staff. There's a wide receiver rumor that actually has some logic behind it. There's a serious pass rush situation starting to heat up. And quietly, maybe more quietly than people expected, the 49ers may be sitting on a backup quarterback asset that could turn into something a lot bigger. So let me throw this to the faithful right out of the gate. Do you feel like the Niners are getting stronger right now? Or more exposed? And yeah, if you're locked in with the 49ers faithful and you want more coverage like this, hit like and subscribe, because this one has a lot to unpack. Let's start with the coaching move, because on the surface it feels like one of those background stories people can shrug off. I don't think it is. The 49ers added Matt Eberflus to the defensive staff in a role similar to assistant head coach of defense, and that matters because every move on this side of the ball feels bigger right now. Gus Bradley is gone after following Robert Saleh to Tennessee, and now San Francisco is trying to rebuild structure, rebuild leadership, and honestly, rebuild some confidence after a season where the defense didn't consistently feel like itself. And here's the thing, experience sounds great. Experience looks good in a headline, but experience alone doesn't win on 3rd and long. It doesn't fix red zone breakdowns, and it doesn't magically restore the identity this defense used to have. Eberflus was the Bears head coach from 2022 through 2024, and that run ended with a 14-32 record. Before that, he had real credibility as a defensive coordinator in Indianapolis. That part is true. There was a time when people around the league saw him as one of the sharper defensive minds out there. But the more recent resume is where the debate starts, because the recent results have not exactly been clean. That's what makes this such an interesting move. It's not some slam dunk hire where everybody just nods and says, "Yep, problem solved." Not even close. This is a staff addition that brings experience, but also baggage. It brings perspective, but also questions. And when you pair that with Raheem Morris coming in to run the defense, now the conversation gets even louder. Morris also comes in with head coaching experience and a long NFL background, but let's be honest about the tension here. Neither Morris nor Eberflus carries the same kind of defensive aura Robert Saleh had in this building. Saleh had a clear identity. He had juice. He had command. He had that kind of presence where a defense felt like it took on his personality. So now the question the faithful is going to wrestle with is simple. Does this new setup actually sharpen the defense? Or is San Francisco trying to replace elite defensive energy with accumulated experience and hoping that's enough? That's where the fan split is going to come from. Some people are going to look at this and say, good, add veterans, add guys who've seen everything, add voices that can steady the room. Others are going to look at the recent track record and say, why should I feel great about this? And honestly, both reactions make sense. Still, there is a practical upside here. Eberflus isn't walking in as the primary play caller. He's there to help build weekly plans, help shape adjustments, add perspective, and support the defensive operation. In that kind of role, he may actually be more useful. Let me say this. Sometimes a coach is better when he's not carrying the whole thing on his back. Sometimes the right move is reducing the scope and maximizing the specialty. If that's what the 49ers are doing here, then this could work better than people think. But while the defense is trying to rebuild its voice, there's another conversation that's starting to get louder on the offensive side. And this one has that classic off-season feel to it. It starts as a rumor, then it picks up steam, then suddenly everybody's asking whether it makes too much sense to ignore. That brings us to Darnell Mooney. Mooney's name started buzzing after the idea surfaced that Atlanta is planning to move on from him. Nothing is confirmed here in terms of San Francisco making a move. That part matters. There is no done deal. There is no reason to act like the 49ers already landed him. But once his name hit the market conversation, the Niners immediately became one of those teams that people started connecting to the situation. And when you actually look at the layers, you can understand why. First, there's the player profile. Mooney is not just some random depth receiver people are throwing into the rumor mill. In 2024, his first season in Atlanta, he put up 64 catches for 992 yards and 5 touchdowns. That is real production. That's a receiver who can threaten vertically, create separation, and generate chunk plays. He can stress a defense down the field, and that skill set always has value in a creative offensive system. Now, in 2025, the production dipped. He finished with 32 catches, 443 yards, and 1 touchdown in 15 games. That drop matters. It absolutely matters. It's one of the reasons this becomes a debate instead of a no-brainer. But even with that decline, Mooney still profiles as a player with speed and field-stretching ability. And for a team evaluating ways to adjust the roster without shopping at the very top of the market, that gets interesting fast. Then you get into the coaching ties, and this is where the rumor really starts to feel less random. Mooney has a professional history with Matt Eberflus from Chicago, where Eberflus was the head coach while Mooney was on the roster. That doesn't guarantee anything, but in the NFL, existing relationships absolutely matter when teams are evaluating available players. Coaches trust what they've already seen. They trust what they already know. There's also another connection through Raheem Morris, who previously coached in Atlanta before landing in San Francisco. So now you've got staff members with direct or recent links to the environments around Mooney. Think about that for a second. Add that to the player profile. Add that to a 49ers offense that could always use more explosive speed on the perimeter. And now you've got the exact kind of off-season rumor that can gain real traction. This is where the faithful is going to split again. Some fans are going to say Mooney makes a ton of sense because he adds speed, stretches coverage, and gives Kyle Shanahan another weapon who can flip field position fast. Others are going to look at the 2025 dip and say, why should this move excite me if the production already fell off? That's a fair pushback too. Right now, the smart way to frame it is this. Mooney is a rumor worth watching. That's it. Not a lock, not a guarantee, but definitely not random noise. And while that conversation builds on offense, the much bigger swing may be happening on defense. Because once the 49ers start monitoring pass rushers, you know they're thinking about something real. And honestly, they should be. One thing I always look at in an offseason is what a team starts circling as a problem. When a contender starts paying attention to pass rush options, that usually tells you the building knows pressure has to improve. And in San Francisco's case, that's not a subtle issue. The 49ers finished 2025 with just 20 total sacks, the fewest in the entire NFL. That is not a small weakness. That is the kind of weakness that shows up everywhere. It shows up on late downs. It shows up in coverage stress. It shows up in the red zone. It shows up when you need one defensive series to save a game. That's why Trey Hendrickson is such an interesting name here. According to Matt Barrows on KNBR, the 49ers are expected to be one of the teams keeping a close eye on Hendrickson's situation. Again, same standard here. That does not mean a deal is happening. It does not mean San Francisco is about to land him. But it does mean the team is in the conversation, monitoring a player who has been one of the league's most productive edge rushers over the last several years. And this isn't hype based on nothing. Hendrickson has 81 career sacks in 117 games. Before last season, he had back-to-back 17.5 sack years. That is premium pass rush production. That is the kind of guy offenses plan around. That is the kind of guy who can change how protections are set before the ball is even snapped. Now, there is a real caution flag here, and you can't ignore it. He was limited to 7 games in 2025 because of injury and finished with 4 sacks, his lowest total since 2018. So the question becomes, which version are you buying into? Are you betting on the established disruptor who has repeatedly proven he can wreck games? Or are you stepping into a contract situation right as durability concerns start getting louder? That's where the conversation gets tense, because the upside is obvious, but so is the risk. And the price matters too. Projected market value has him around $25 million a year. That is serious money. So now the conversation around the 49ers turns strategic fast. Do you pay heavily for proven pass rush juice because this defense desperately needs it? Or do you try to rebuild that pressure more creatively through depth, rotation, and internal growth? Max Crosby is another name that has hovered around this kind of discussion, but that path looks even harder. If Crosby were actually available, the trade compensation could get wild, and there would likely be a massive line of interested teams. That can get out of hand quickly. For the 49ers, Hendrickson may feel more realistic to monitor, even if he's still expensive. And I think that's the heart of the debate. This defense needs more pressure. It needs more disruption. It needs more moments where a quarterback never gets comfortable in the pocket. But how aggressive should San Francisco be in chasing that? Because every contender says it wants more pass rush. Not every contender can afford the way it has to buy it. Then you get to maybe the most fascinating, quiet storyline of the whole offseason, because this one doesn't come with the same headline heat, but it could have a real impact on the roster-building side. That's Mac Jones. The 49ers are in a pretty unusual spot here. Brock Purdy is the starter, that part is clear. He is still the centerpiece at quarterback. But when Purdy was unavailable for part of last season, Mac Jones stepped in and did something important. He built value. Maybe more value than a lot of people expected. In 8 starts, Jones went 5-3. He threw 13 touchdowns against 6 interceptions. He also finished with a 69.6% completion rate, which stood out across the league. Those numbers do not suddenly make him a franchise savior, nobody's saying that. But they do make him exactly the kind of quarterback teams start thinking about when they need stability, depth, or a viable bridge. And that's where this becomes a real front office conversation. Jones carries a modest cap hit, around $3.07 million, which makes him one of the more cost-effective quarterback options on a roster. So San Francisco is looking at a player who knows Kyle Shanahan's system, has already shown he can function inside it, and can keep the offense afloat if the starter misses time. For a team with playoff expectations, that matters a lot. At the same time, that value can work in 2 directions. John Lynch made it clear that the 49ers like having Jones around, and that it would take something pretty strong to make them consider moving him. And honestly, that makes sense. Why rush? Why panic? Why move a reliable backup quarterback just because other teams might call? Be honest. If you're trying to make a playoff run, the last thing you want is to watch your season start to wobble because you gave away the one backup who already proved he can steady the offense. That matters, especially when Purdy's health history is part of the broader picture. But if another team gets aggressive, if someone comes with real draft value, then the whole thing changes. There's already been talk connecting teams like Miami and Minnesota to the situation, even without any formal move happening. And if the market shifts after the draft, San Francisco could end up sitting on a very real asset. History gives you a reference point too. Back in 2017, New England sent Jimmy Garoppolo to San Francisco for a second-round pick. Mac Jones may not bring back a first-rounder, but a strong second-round value feels like the kind of range that would at least make the 49ers think long and hard. That's why this is such a good spot for them. If Jones stays, they keep one of the better backup situations in the league. If the right offer comes in, they can turn depth at quarterback into meaningful draft capital. For a contender, that's leverage. Real leverage. So when I step back and look at everything happening in Santa Clara, the picture gets pretty clear. The 49ers are trying to reset without blowing up the championship window. They've added coaching experience on defense, even if the fit still has to prove itself. There's a wide receiver rumor with enough logic behind it to keep everybody watching. There's real attention on the pass rush market because this defense has to be more dangerous up front. And Mac Jones has quietly become one of the more interesting chess pieces on the roster. That was the promise at the start, and here's the payoff. The Niners aren't standing still. They're playing this offseason with patience, leverage, and a lot of pressure attached to every decision. Now I want to hear from the faithful. Which one of these situations has the biggest chance to change the season? Drop your take in the comments, hit like, and subscribe if you want more 49ers coverage like this, because this offseason still feels like it has a few swings left in it.